Hey, so I'm here with my friend David Green. So David opened his door to a complete stranger, me, when I was coming up in Parker County, and we were opening our law firm branch in Willow Park where we started, and now we're in Aledo. So David is with Cross Chapel Bible Church, and he is the Connect pastor, and we've been good friends ever since. Or at least I've considered you a great friend and
Absolutely.
really somebody on my side up there. So, hey,
Yeah.
David, thanks for making time. But can you tell us a little bit? Hey, tell us about Cross Chapel, and then your role specifically as Connect Pastor. And then I think today we're going to get into hopefully building relationship bridges and just some of those things that are just going to help us navigate some waters.
Sure. Yeah. Oh man, uh, Josh, it has been a pleasure to develop the friendship that we've had over these past few years, and thankful for that. And my role on the pastoral staff at Christ Chapel is Connect Pastor. I have enjoyed doing that for several years now, and I tell our team of great volunteers and staff that our job in Connect ministry is basically connecting people to Christ and to Christ
Mm,
Chapel, or to our local body, our local fellowship, local church. And we obviously want to help people to connect and develop a relationship with the Lord. And
mhm.
so there's obvious importance and value in that for all of eternity. But we also want to help people connect with others in the local body
Mm.
and develop good fellowship, good encouragement, good accountability with each other. And as we think
Yeah.
about those two relationships, the goal also being to use our relationship with God and those within the family of faith to also reach out and have good
Mhm.
relationships with folks that would be outside the walls of the church as well.
Yeah, and that's really what I kind of wanted to ask you about, and that's why I appreciate you making time today. I mean, like engaging with somebody that we just don't know, like a complete stranger, man, that can be pretty challenging. Even for like an extrovert. Why is that so hard?
I think there's can be a lot of reasons for that, personal and some maybe even cultural. But speaking on the broader spectrum, things are just different nowadays.
Mm,
100 years ago, back before air conditioning, we'd
yeah.
maybe be out on the front porch sharing time with neighbors and
Mm,
friends that would walk by. And today we live a fairly cocooned life. We
mhm,
drive into our garages and go into our air conditioned houses and get distracted by our technological devices. And that can be a bit isolating. And I also think just the way that we communicate when we do has changed. It's not as conversational. It's
mm,
more kind of a soundbite, transactional way of
mm,
communicating, and even just how we communicate our differences. They can tend to be almost combative in
mm.
some of our communication and conversation, and a lot of that is true due to the things that are swirling around in our current culture today.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so that kind of leads me to my next question is, you know, can you give us some tips? I mean, for starting a conversation and like really building bridges into the lives of people who we may not know. We need to
Yeah,
see some practical tips.
yeah,
Can you help on some of that?
sure. A lot of times we start out with the traditional pleasantries of "Hi, my name's David. What's your name? How are you?" And then it's like, "Oh well, oops. What do we say? What do we say next?" And I would just encourage you, if you have a few minutes with someone, maybe think about a well-phrased question. What's a good question that would fit the context of where you are? Maybe this is not going to become your new best friend, but let's just say we have a few minutes to interact with someone that we might want to get to know a little bit better. And a question that I've been using lately is, what are you learning? What are you learning?
Oh, that's good.
For instance, when visiting a restaurant, sometime maybe around the middle of the meal, I might say to the server who's been helping us, "Hey, Justin, thanks so much
Mm,
for serving us today. We're really enjoying our meal. In fact, my wife Katie and I here, we were just discussing a question that we ask each other, and I just want to ask you, what are you learning in life.
Oh, I bet you get all kinds of good answers for that
Yeah,
too.
that,
Yeah.
and I tell people, the answer to that question could be as simple as, "Hey, I'm learning to do karate," or
Yeah.
"I'm learning the meaning of life." It can be as simple or as broad as they want to make it. But I've had a fascinating response to just a simple question like that.
Hmm.
In one instance, a server in a restaurant came back two separate times to add to his answer. He said, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you this, and I wanted to tell
Oh,
you
that's
that."
so neat.
And another time was even able to follow up a conversation by going, next time we happened to be in a particular restaurant, the server that we'd met previously came over
Uh,
and talked to us just because we'd started that initial dialogue with a question about, what are you learning?
isn't
Because
that so amazing too? I mean, I love that, David. Thanks for sharing that. And that's going to be, there's no telling what you can learn from that question yourself too. It's really neat. Well, okay, so I got a little harder one then for you. So, um, you have somebody you might be really seeing a lot in your life, like a new neighbor, and you want to build a relationship with them, but some of those instances you're just like, I don't want to do anything that's going to make it too weird because I'm going to see this person for a long time. So, talk on that just for a minute, like building
yeah,
relationships because you may not see the server all the time, but this new guy's new who's moving next to you. Talk about that for a minute.
yeah, exactly. It's like, man, if I mess this up, it may be best that we remain total strangers.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
I think for a variety of reasons, people in our world today are just a little bit more guarded. I mean, we don't just go knock on a neighbor's door typically and take the plate of cookies and get invited in for 30 or 45 minutes. It's just a different pace. It's just a different expectation. Um, Trust is an issue. Many people are guarded just because they've come to assume that it's not safe to trust or engage with people, and sometimes there's very valid reasons for that. But I think um, I think one of the things that we have to be careful for in establishing those relationships, maybe with a new coworker or a new neighbor, is to be careful not to try to engage with them through trying to argue a viewpoint or
Uh,
argue a position. I was talking to a really good and godly man just yesterday, and he said, I don't know that I have ever been able to influence an individual with the gospel by arguing with them,
yeah.
trying to argue them over into faith or arguing them over into seeing my point. And I think one of the best things that we can do, even in that context of a new neighbor, a new coworker, is just ask questions to get to know them. One
Mm.
of the most fascinating people I ever knew is an uncle of mine. He's since passed away, but he did his training as an
Mm.
attorney, and
Okay.
a little bit later in life, he worked with the FBI in Birmingham, Alabama, as a
Oh wow.
special agent. And it was amazing to me how he would use questions to get where he needed to go. And he would obviously could tell a lot about the investigations that he was doing, but he would just kind of tell how he would use questions. And I noticed when he would come to a visit, he would talk to business owners, shopkeepers, tradespeople, people across the street from where he happened to be staying. And he would get in these very in-depth and engaging and interesting conversations. And a lot of times people would walk away and say, that is the most interesting man that I've ever
Oh
known.
wow.
And the funny thing was, he was interesting because all he was doing was asking questions that allowed that person to really just open up about themselves. And I thought, well, you
That's
probably thought he was interesting because he invited you just to tell a lot about
okay.
about
Well,
yourself.
that leads me to maybe kind of one of my final comments or questions too. I want to know because the questions that you ask, I mean, you prove the point, are so important. What you ask is important. So, is there some kind of formula or format on knowing like what kind of questions we need to ask people in order to build those relationship bridges?
Yeah, yeah,
You have any tips on that?
yeah. To be clear, I don't think everything has to be posed in the form of a question. We
Yeah.
certainly can tell about our lives and experiences, but But one of the things pertaining to asking good questions, I think, is to ask open-ended questions. In other words, ask questions that can't just be answered with a quick yes or no. You can get further down the road probably with, tell me a little bit about how your day went, than yes or no, did your day go good today?
Let me interrupt you for a second because I'll have to tell my wife Julia will ask me how's the day, and I told her before, we laugh about it now. I said, if you want to know about my day, you're gonna have to say, tell me about your day. Otherwise, I just
Right.
like,
There
it's
you
fine.
go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So so Julie's learned that on me already.
Exactly. Tell me about your day. Don't get it too short and sweet. But I would say another thing to keep in mind is to ask a second or a third follow-up question. Sometimes we get off to a great start. We ask that initial question, and the person on the other end, they start to answer, but then we start thinking about how we're going to take what they said and kind of shift the spotlight over to me. And oh my goodness, that happened to me too. And you wouldn't believe, it turned out so much worse than your situation, or it
Oh
turned out
yeah.
so much better than your, you think that was a good story. Listen to mine. And so we,
Oh yeah.
and we almost use the other person's response as ammunition to or a way to turn the spotlight back. But maybe just ask one more question.
Mm,
Well, tell me more about that, or that seems to be really important to you, and just see if you can't draw out a little bit more, because that is a process of building trust, is
mm,
and getting to know somebody, but building trust, because you're not trying to sell them anything. You're not trying to pull the wool over their eyes, when you are genuinely interested in getting to know more about them as a person. And I would say, we're probably all at one time or another, as we get to know people, we're going to encounter folks who say something that we disagree with. And when that collides with our faith, or with a value that we hold really dear, we want to get defensive, and we
yeah.
want to kind of get, verbally, we want to get in their face. And again, I think just asking the question about,
Mm,
ask a question that draws them out a little bit more. For instance, to say, hey, that sounds like a really important perspective to you.
mm,
Can you tell me a little bit more about how you, over the course of time, maybe
mm,
came to that conclusion? Or I can tell this is a really important topic to you. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean when you say so and so?
mm,
And if we jump in at the first person, or at the first thing a person says with which we disagree, we're kind of dealing with things at a level that really, it makes it very combative. But if we can kind of get down to, okay, I see where, while we disagree on how we would see this issue or that, if we keep asking just a few more questions, we can usually get down to something where we can at least find some common ground that will help keep the relational bridge strong, even if we disagree on uh, politics or matters of faith or whatever the case may be. So I
oh,
think
that's
that's
so good.
important. And I would just say, lastly, when you do talk about yourself, share what you do with humility. And ask
Mm,
yourself, when I walk away from this conversation with my new coworker, with my friend, are they going to be edified?
mm,
Would they be blessed in some way? Would they remember this
mm,
conversation in a way that they want to come back and learn more?
mm,
Just like Jesus with the woman at the well, he confronted her about
mm.
some things that were going on in her life, but she walked away from that conversation intrigued and went
Oh
and
yeah.
told others about it. And it stimulated more conversation and more thought, as opposed to her getting angry and just shutting down and saying,
Yeah.
hey, I don't ever want to talk about this again. So I think those are some uh, important things. I want to say to you, I think you're obviously gifted in the work that you do, but I think relationally, you are,
Mm.
Josh, one of those kinds of people who engage others well. You're a good, my nickname for you, the people whisperer.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, I like asking questions. So what you're talking about, I'm just curious of people. So yeah.
so I
Well,
appreciate you investing well in the lives of others.
well, thank you. Well, let me ask you, kind of as we close up, thanks for helping us I mean, some people may think, well, I know how to ask questions, but this is super helpful in our current context because, I mean, just for all the reasons you mentioned. So hopefully we'll be able to get some of this out and really give somebody some tools. But if somebody wants to plug in and get connected in Christ Chapel, tell us about where you guys are at, kind of the different cities and different, just give us the big picture flyby because there's people maybe in Parker, Erath, my county, your county. So
Sure.
where
Yeah,
can they connect and kind of service times type of things?
absolutely. We are maybe one of the best places to get information would be the website, which is just our initials, ccbcfamily.org. But we have locations in Fort Worth, off of I-30 in Montgomery. We're out in East Parker County in Willow Park,
Mhm.
right off of Interstate 20, and then down in Burleson on I-35 South, just a tad south of Sam's Club, down that way. But we would love for anybody that would be interested in lives in those communities, maybe coming in new, just like we talked
Okay.
about, a new
Oh,
neighbor, a
good.
new friend,
Yeah.
to come visit, and give us the opportunity to get to know them. And of course, I'd be happy to take anybody out for a cup of coffee that's wanting to know more
Okay.
about the church, or just get to know more about how to plug in the faith community.
That's David, thanks for making time today. I really appreciate it. And we'll try to link to the website and maybe to your email if they have any questions, but I appreciate you taking time.
Josh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.